Women's Prison Podcast, where we are live on the Recyard every Wednesday night. Hey, everybody. It is Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Central Time. We are live on the Recyard Women's Prison Podcast. I'm Marci Marie.
I'm Toonchi.
Toonchi flying in by the seat of her pants. I can't believe you made it. I was beginning to think I was going to be soloing it. I thought the people were going to have a lovely surprise tonight and have a break.
Honey, I'm in my Just Leadership class. It's intense and it's a lot of share and it's a lot of work and so I'm flying from one thing to the next.
Well, that's okay. I'm proud of you for being in that.
Now look at all this. I don't have my lighting done.
Yeah,
I
that's
don't.
embarrassing.
You know how I am. I can't.
Oh my gosh. I see you, Carrie. I see y'all in the chat. Welcome in, everybody. Tonight, we are talking about dangerous women and the way that I wish she would be quiet while she was doing that. That would be polite. We're talking about dangerous women, the way that women get villainized by society, especially formerly incarcerated women, right? So she hasn't heard what we've even said. Toonch.
Yes.
You could have done that quietly so we could have carried on with the show. And
why would I do that?
I don't know why you why would I think that you would do that when that goes against everything I know about you?
I mean, really?
Cynthia, Jerry, Judy, Department of Corruptions, welcome in. Thank you. Yes, so tonight we are talking about dangerous women. We're talking about the way that society and the government and authority figures in general villainize women as a whole, and then especially, right, women that have been convicted of committing crimes of all sorts. And we're just going to talk about how we're going to take back maybe our own narrative and how we're going to use that to empower ourselves instead of fall under the oppression, which is what I think it's intended for. And how so I'm really excited. It's going to be a great show, and we themed this show around our Women's History Month event for Lioness Justice Impacted Women's Alliance, which is going to be March 30th in Austin. Hit up our social medias. It's at the Austin Cinemaker Space, and you guys definitely want to be there. It's going to be powerful and a party,
That's
celebration.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's going to be a good one. I'm really excited to have you. Audra Lee, I see you. Kate Ashley, Russell Lee, thank you guys for joining in. So happy to have everybody. Before we get started with the show, Toonchi, let's do a weekly recap. Toonch, how was your week? You don't remember?
Well, honey, I'm thinking about it for a second here, and trying to remember. Oh, the graduation that our friends attended for their Freedom in Practice cohort, which trains system impacted people how to do legislative advocacy and builds power in them. So I was really excited to be able to share in that with some of our closest friends. Very excited about it. And I had plans to do some boom, boom, banging on St. Patrick's Day, and I got very ill. You can still hear it in my head. So
you've been resting
right here with the kitty. But yes. I was super glad that I was able to spend time at their graduation. So that was the highlight of my last week. What about you?
I think that mostly did I travel?
Here we go.
I was in I don't know, girl. I've been changing diapers. I've been changing diapers and making some TikTok videos, and I've been busy with meetings. Yeah, so that's how that goes. I did just get off the phone right before we hopped on here with Colin Ray. And so he said
Oh.
he was going to hop on and watch. So, Colin, if you're watching, I love you. And thank you for being my good friend and all of that good stuff. Uh, so, yeah, other than that, that's all I know.
Well, I mean, that's the good work of trying to balance all the roles as a woman, right? Like, it's something that we tell people. They're like, "Well, I don't know if I can come to the event. I have my kids with me." Girl, bring them kids,
Yep.
right? Like, we're community. I do want to say, I know you popped this up there a minute ago. Uh, Nancy, I knew her. I've known her a long time, and I'm just really excited that she's watching. I appreciate her and her support of all the advocacy at Linus. So I just wanted to a special hello to Nancy, and all of our friends here. This, you know, I did. I was going to save it for next week's highlight, but I'll mention it here. I was on a panel. We were both on the panel. My God,
We
Marcy.
were on a panel. Yes,
That's
we
right.
were.
With
Shout out to Peaches and the Lion Cub. They're here watching too. They're always here. So we're so glad to see you too. Yes, tell us about the panel.
That's my baby. Hold on, I wanna be able to see him in the Facebook group
In the
so I can.
Facebook group. So
Yeah.
they're watching from our Linus private group, which is why her name's not showing up. But this is Chanel Jones. She's one of the regional directors for Linus in the Central Texas area, 16 years incarceration in Texas under her belt. And I knew her the entire time I was incarcerated. We did time together on the Dr. Lane Murray unit. So
Okay.
welcome, welcome. Okay, the
Okay.
panel. Tell
Okay,
us.
the panel was, prison book bans, how the state of Texas prison system tries to essentially eradicate and make disappear the stories of women in the LGBTQ plus community inside our prisons. And so we were there with some law students who are doing some phenomenal research about this very issue with us. And then also the Texas After Violence Project team was there, Hannah and Raquel, and they offered their perspective of why stories are important, how it relates to identity and community building and memory work. So it was a great panel. And I felt, I got really nervous, Marcy. I mean, it's one thing when we're here with our folks, there could be 100 folks in our community here. It wouldn't make me nervous at all, but there was over 100 people watching that panel with the American Library Association. And I hope I didn't ramble, did I? Because I was very nervous.
You started too, but hey, I think that when you see me come off mute, it kind of reminds you, okay,
You need
like
to
I got
stop.
my because I'm only going to do that when I know you've gotten your point across because when you're nervous, baby, you'll just keep going.
I
You'll
will.
keep going.
You
So
know,
that's
you know where that comes from. Over explaining comes from trauma because whether it was prison staff or I love my dad very much, but it was fearful as a child. I would over explain because the more you talk, the more hopefully you'll cover everything and calm them down, and they'll forget about what they were upset about. And that took therapy for me to understand why I over explain things.
and it's okay. You did great. You really
You
did.
did great. It just was so impactful. People reached out, and just every guest there had a perfect role, and it just fits smoothly together about this very nuanced thing that we talked about when we were on the inside, of how books with that are supposed to be allowed in, get denied for nudity. Well, it's a breast cancer book. And like you had told everybody, this is how we were trying to learn how to do breast exams, or a self help book that details sexual assault. Well, a woman wrote it for other women. And it's denied, but the James Patterson, where the lady's head's cut off,
Right.
that's fine.
Yeah, it
Right?
doesn't make sense at all, and it's things that we know from our experience, but there's no proof except for our word, which does our word as a formerly incarcerated woman, as a woman who has been convicted of a crime, doesn't hold a lot of weight with a lot of people. But guess what? When we team up with researchers who then do the research and have the proof to back up what we've known all along, then now we have some weight. So we surely appreciate our partners that team with us and work with us. So exciting. Lee is asking about the Caitlin Armstrong case. And yes, we did an episode about her. So you can go back and watch that. Even if you weren't at the live, go back, watch it, comment, leave your thoughts, and we'll respond to that, I promise. Which reminds me, Department of Corruptions didn't remind me, or maybe he did and I missed it. You guys be sure and hit that like button, hit the heart button, share this live, all of those good things. We appreciate your community in the chat. And if you're listening, wherever you hear your favorite podcasters, please do leave us a review. We appreciate that so much. We have Australia in the house tonight. Talia Osborne, welcome. So glad to see you all. Yeah, let's jump into this
Yeah,
dangerous
you
women.
know it's my favorite thing to talk about. Let me just, like you said, this is a lead up to our event in Austin called Dangerous Women in Our Villain Era, and I hope to make this maybe a yearly event that we do across the state. I think that'll be fun because everybody we tell this to gets really excited about. Now, some places, Marcy, have gotten very nervous about it and say, "Oh, we don't know it makes us nervous," right? And it's like, well, that's exactly what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to make you think. It's supposed to make you uncomfortable and make you nervous. And the idea started. I wanted to kind of do that for my birthday, just as a fundraiser for us. And then I said, no, I want us to celebrate Women's History Month together as a party and to really explore what it means to be labeled as a dangerous woman and a villain. And it kind of goes back to, everybody got excited when the book Wicked came out, and then the Broadway musical, and now there's going to be a movie adaptation, right? And it was this exciting concept of taking the Wicked Witch, right, that people were terrified of as children, right, and looking at her backstory. And when you do that, your understanding and your perspective and ideas about the Wicked Witch change because she's more than a villain. She's a complicated woman with her own experiences and her own perspective, and you begin to understand her behavior a little bit better, right? So that's really the impetus of it. But let's talk about, Marcy, the ways that society, and then we'll close out with what does it truly mean to be a dangerous woman. But let's talk about the ways society labels us as that.
I think that my first thought on that, as a woman that has been convicted of a crime and has served her sentence and is back home, I first think that women are judged more harshly than men when we have committed a crime. And I think that has to do with the family unit. I think that in men's prisons, I don't believe that, and please, gentlemen, speak up, speak up. If I'm saying something that's not factual, speak up. I never did time in a men's prison. Assuming that in a men's officers don't say things to those men like you didn't care about your kids in the free world. Why you worried about getting on the phone to call your kids now? You didn't care about them when you was out there running the streets, because those are the kind of things that we heard in on a regular basis. On a daily basis, I heard that from some staff member, so much to the point that we started saying it to each other.
Well, Marcy, and you bring up a really fascinating point that we've all discussed when we were there, that we discuss out here. All the ways that women are in trans folks and LGBTQ plus community, anybody that's not gendered as a cis man, right, a heterosexual man, this devaluing and this control and this control over our bodies, our sexuality, the devaluing. We're objectified. We're damned if we do. We're damned if we don't. The way society does that, and then it's interesting when you see that misogyny kind of internalized within us, right? And then we take it out on each other. And I've really looked at that over the past year with myself, right? Like looking at the violence within myself and where these structures come from, not just my mental health, the way I react to things, but that internalized misogyny. And we often saw that in the worst form in female prison guards, not the male staff. We already knew what we were dealing with male staff. Stay away from them. They're not going to do a lot, but they can. To me, they were just like just we just stood. They just I don't know. I just stayed away from them and didn't really. It was the female guards that we internalize that stuff as women. And I think society does it so that we strike out against each other. And I've been guilty of it. Honey, both of my charges are violent charges against other women. What is that? What did society teach me about myself as a woman? To hate myself and to hate other women who I desperately want to be in community more than anything else. So you bring up this really fascinating part of it, is that how that turns us against each other. It's like an insidious little parasite or virus to infect women.
Yeah, and they do, and they, who is they, right? The patriarchy. Could I say that?
Yeah.
They want to keep us in conflict with one another. We see it on small levels. In our circles, we see it. We see certain people antagonizing us against one another, because the fact is, guys, if we all stood together, I'm sorry, ladies, we are powerful together, as is any marginalized community. I think that all of us, if we stood together, we could really get some things done. And so, yeah, I am so curious now because KK's watching from YouTube and he says, "Did you see the woman who commented on your post about parole?" It was a very misogynistic comment, and I didn't see it. Oh,
Well,
wait, I did see it. And it's because that video, sometimes y'all, I turn on my camera and it's first thing in the morning and I have a cup of coffee and I have sleepy in my eyes still and I record a video because something's on my heart. And other times, like the time when I recorded that parole video, I had gotten my hair done that day. I was feeling myself. And so I showed that on camera, and she did say something tacky to me about if I was trying to show off. I think that was the comment. And that was a
well,
perfect example of what we're talking
exactly.
about.
Right. And Marcy, to have to look at that inside myself, to say the ways that I fight against injustice, I myself have done. I
Yes.
myself have done towards other women. Let me be very clear. And over the past couple of months, I've looked at that and said, what is this? Because talking about dangerous women, we have to talk about female rage and anger. Where is this coming from? And it's coming from the reaction and the pressure and the squeezing, right? The gaslighting. And it is done in a way that internalizes that misogyny, right? So that I am looking at other women in my life that have failed me, or that I'm holding to some standard that has been ingrained in me. And I am essentially playing out that same violence done to me as a woman to other women.
In a way, when we take I'm going to use the word abuser, and I don't know that that's the right word, but when we take on their characteristics, we feel empowered. And sadly, that means that we are stomping on other people,
Right.
and doing exactly what the plan is, right? Which is, I think, just to keep us down.
Yeah.
So I think
And
that there is. You see that with bullies in school,
mhm.
in grade school. And let me just tell the story real quick. My little brother's the sweetest thing on earth. He is by far, him and my dad are by far the best men I have ever come across my entire life. They are loving, they are kind. Um, and they're big guys, people don't mess with them. But my little brother, my little chubby cheeked brother, when he was in 4th or 3rd grade, was riding his bike down the street, and a young boy that was in my class, so he was 2 years older than him, knocked him off his bike and took his bike. And my little brother walked home, and of course my mom and goes and knocks on the door, and the way that she heard that father talk to her child and grip that child up, that it was an abused child
Mhm.
that was then going to school and showing that same. It's what we do as women to each other when we're told things and talked down on. We do that then to each other the same way that that child did that. He expressed it that way, the same way.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, right? What you're saying is it is an inability to express anger appropriately. It's not knowing, right? Because as women, we're not even taught that anger is allowed.
Right.
Um, and
Or
so,
emotion.
or
When we
right,
show. Yeah, and
you're
and that's
hysterical.
probably men also get taught that also, right? But, yeah, if we're crying, then all of a sudden what we say isn't valid. Oh, because she's just an emotional wreck.
Well, and like the female prison guards that treated us the worst, right? I think it was I always thought it was because they are powerless, and it's almost like you said, like that 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 power dynamic. You have a group of people that you have under your control, and it just trickles down. Like all that abuse trickles down from the top all the way to the bottom, and it's like the administration will treat them like garbage. And especially as women, they're getting treated real bad at a state agency. So then they take it out on us in an even worse way, right? That unfortunately is unhealthy human behavior, and it makes sense. And so I've had to take a look at that within myself. I've had to take a look at that with what are the motivations in society and the structures that have been taught to us, that we feel that way about one another. Now, I do want to share something, and I know our people listening to the podcast can't see it, but we can describe it for them. I put together a little slideshow of some. This is what people think dangerous women in prison look like. Okay.
Stereotypical. This is the stereotypical vision I think that lots of people get. And so what we're looking at is a poster with some women, incarcerated women, kind of breaking out of a barred cell, but they are dressed like they are on an episode of Baywatch. they're they're lots of cleavage and very short, scandalous shorts, and they're tell them what they're doing to this poor man who I.
Girl, so they're busting out of their prison. It says chained to their cells, stripped of all their possessions, beaten, abused, and now they're busting out. So I agree with that, right? Like I agree with that. Escape from women's prison. The problem is here, this is the message, and these are what are called the 70s exploitation grindhouse films. So we see women of different intersections here, women of color, a white woman, and they're kind of fighting each other, and they've got knives in their hands and they've got the keys, but interestingly, they have the man on the ground and they're standing on his head, and they're in their
Right.
bras and these booty shorts in prison with these knives, right? And so this is when people think of women in prison, this is what they're thinking of, Marcy. The next one here, do you want to tell people what the title of this film is
The
called?
title is Chicks in Chains and Mean Mothers.
Right. So we've got a variety of scenes here with, again, women with knives. There's a very intense sexual assault happening in the middle of there, and to the side with a man who's doing violence to a woman. And then here's a prison guard that I will say, what does she look like? She looks like the stereotyped lesbian with her short hair, with some woman draped in her arms. Again, sexualized, violent, uncontrollable.
Oh, this one is caged heat. Caged heat. This doesn't even look like a gel. They're wearing little lingerie things with numbers on them. Like the prison outfit is so far from this. Is KK asked, "Is this porn? Is it porn, Tooch?"
A lot of these prison films, women's prison films, even today, but especially older films, they were again they were called exploitation films, and they sexualize women to a great degree. And so this feeds into that fantasy about what is a dangerous woman. She's this violent seductress. We see here white hot desires melt in cold prison steel.
Good grief.
God
I
almighty.
and this is just so oh, here's another one. At least it's pink, so it's cuter. Uh, but it's just the same thing. It's a woman. Is that a man on the bottom? She's got high they're in prison with high heels
She's
and
stepping on a man's chest. There's another man in his underwear running from them. They're drinking. They've got their bras on. Their boobs are out. They're in panties. They're in. Then this is called 10 Violent Women.
it
To
says,
go ahead.
"Look out, world. Here they come. 10 violent women. Too hot to handle, too cunning to catch. No prison could hold them."
Girl, did you see any of this inside of there as we're going through
Absolutely
this?
not. And I want to say, even like shows like Orange is the New Black and Wentworth, which y'all know I'm big fans of those shows, even though they weren't quite our experience. But even and I know that they do this for entertainment value because the sex scenes in those shows were hot and steamy and romantic and all of that and that's just not even how it goes down. Yes, sex happens in women's prisons. No, it doesn't happen like that because we're not in an environment that allows for that, right? Uh this one uh
Fugitive girls, and they're again in their bras and bikinis. She's got chains on her. There's women down here fighting. There's a woman that just shot somebody.
choking
There's a
each other.
lot of chaos. No prison bars could hold them.
Good grief.
Oh boy.
Women's prison massacre. The killing never stops. And we have a woman with, I mean, I'll just say, her legs are spread wide open on the cover. She's wearing almost nothing, stomping in a prison guard's whatever. In the back, we have looks like a threesome love triangle with a guard and two very scandalous Baywatch looking uh incarcerated ladies. I don't know. No, this isn't.
There's another woman with a chain that she's beat some man to death. And it's interesting, Marcy, as I was looking through these images, so many came up with this very little scene where the prison guard has been grabbed through the bars and the arms and the hands of the hungry, vicious, scandalous siren women are reaching through the bars to grab him in hot sexual craziness, right? And it's like, what the? Oh boy.
Oh, no man is safe. Bad girls.
Several women with shotguns. There's another woman choking another woman. There's a man sexually assaulting some. And then we've got some woman voyeuristically looking through the slot of a cell door, watching two women get it on.
Yes, this is fascinating. Barbed wire dolls. And so we have a naked woman with just holding a little piece of cloth across her nipples
Yep.
Yes, Shannon Monroe's in the house. She said the eyes are too much for her. One girl is scantily dressed, handcuffed, chained up. Uh, Golly, this is. And let me tell you, I have been on the phone with a man while I was in prison asking me things like, "So have you seen any girls get it on? Have you seen like this is I said, "I don't know where you think I am. This is the penitentiary. This is not whatever image of of this kind of crap that's in your mind."
It's just so bad. The big bird cage. Women so hot with desire they melt the chains that enslave them, and it's just women being strung up. They're in shackles,
Completely sex crazed,
sick,
desperate.
desperate. And I think this is the last one I have here, but this is from the 50s, actually. And if you think these are bad, those nickel and dime novels from the 40s and 30s were real bad too. What Happens to Girls Without Men? The shocking story of one man against 1,000 women, girls in prison. And of course, what is the main thing? Two women choking each other out.
Right, right. Cynthia says, maybe I'll go to prison. Some of those scenes looked pretty hot for her.
Right? And so it's through the male gaze that we are told what a dangerous woman is. Her sex is dangerous. Her body is dangerous. She lives to serve men. Everything on her mind, no matter what it is how to embrace and engulf men sexually. Right?
Yes,
That's it.
yeah, yeah, to manipulate, I mean, they physical violence, mental violence, all of that. Yeah, it's a lot. KK said there was a good movie from the 40s called Caged that was realistic. So I'll have to check that out.
Well, and Marcy, it's this is the interpretation of women, and I think why people subconsciously may, especially men, oh, well, women's prison isn't that bad. They're in there having a pillow fight and a slumber party and keep the men away from because they're sex starved and hungry. But other than that, oh, okay, well, it's a bunch of horny girls in a cell together, right?
And
Like that
even
is the thought.
I'm watching on Paramount, I'm watching a series called Mayor of Kingston. Anyways, it's about basically the affiliations in the prison there where they're at are really rough and how they carry into the free world. And it's this guy that kind of navigates that world and tries to keep peace uh, between in the prison and outside the prison. Anyways, the whole thing, this officer, he gets in trouble on the men's unit. And as punishment, they're trying to decide what to do with him. And the staff, and it's a warden and it's a lieutenant and it's some jail or prison staff members, and they're like, what are we going to do with them? And the warden says, send him to the women's unit. You know, he's no good here. Send him to the women's unit. And the staff is like, oh, we can't send him there. He's too handsome. He's too good looking. Those women will eat him alive. And then the warden says, if we can't stop, if that's the issue, if we can't stop him from messing with the inmates, he needs to go anyway. Anyways, the man goes to the woman's prison in this episode I just watched last night. He works and he is doing count, and he goes by the cell, and this woman, and he knocks to make sure, hey, you got to make sure they're breathing and everything when they're in count. And he knocks, and of course the girl, he says, everybody all right in here? And the girl looks at him and sees who he looks like, and looks at him all seductively, and takes her blanket off and opens her legs in her panties. And I'm like, where is this happening? And up until last night, I was like, man, this is a great show. This is like showing some real raw stuff with,
But not
and
for us. Not
no,
for us.
not for the women.
Yeah.
No.
And it's like, we just looked at these horrible posters, right? Like nobody would dare really do those type of posters now per se, but it's still perpetuated. That myth and that idea is still perpetuated. Now that's not to say that there aren't women in prison that are lonely and starved for attention and affection. that act out sometimes when male staff or male incarcerated people are around. I mean, yes, yes, but like this, no, right? And the idea that female incarceration, the whole lens around it is this, is infuriating, right? And it's a way to objectify and make women not human, right? The same way women in society are that way. And, I think the connection here of the way that women are objectified and treated like garbage in society as less than, and it becomes almost an enhanced, like, you think it's bad out here. You take that devaluation and you put women in a cage with no power, with nothing. They are at the bottom now, and it's worse. And the reason I feel like what happens that women get into to incarceration is because they're being punished and they're doing, I don't know what my therapist says that our BPD is about, right? Because borderline personality disorder comes from trauma. And so every reaction that we have as women, I'm just seeing it through this lens, is reactive abuse. And it's her inability to understand her own rage, to appropriately express it, right, without violence. I think that is what the difference is for women that end up in the system. Whatever acting out we did was bad enough that we got caught up in the system. And it's
Well,
demonized far worse than even women trying to react who don't end up, that far along the scale.
yeah, no, I think that you're absolutely right, and I just wanna speak on, in the beginning there, you were talking about women that that lack of attention, and how you did sometimes see women seek that out in staff members, especially male staff members, and I think that that is a direct result of the way society has taught women to find our value in the way men look at us. So we're out here in the free world, and as a woman, I don't feel self-worth unless I have been validated by the opposite sex.
Right.
And that's how I find my own beauty and my own, and so then now I'm in prison and there are no men to give me that. So I'm seeking that, and then all of the other things, right? You're lonely, all of those other things,
You're
but
vulnerable.
vulnerable, mental illness, and the fact is we need people in those positions that won't prey on that,
Yeah.
because that's what ends up happening. Uh,
Yeah.
no,
I mean, society, all the way into prison culture, it's you are dangerous and a threat. If you are a danger and a threat, Marcy, if you have a reaction to the abuse that they do to us, right, and you cope with it in a way that is not considered appropriate, legal, whether it's addiction, whether it's bashing out somebody's window with a baseball bat, whether it's harming yourself, right? Like, there are women that the reaction is so strong, we end up in these cages where we're gaslit again to say, see, I told you were bad. I told
God
you you were
bless.
a villain.
I cannot believe that I'm gonna be the one that brings up Taylor stinking Swift
You did it, honey. Do
in
it.
this episode, but she's a perfect example of how somebody, a woman, having self-confidence, having her own self-worth, a woman of power, a woman people listen to, is villainized in our media, in the, I mean, she's that's the example. And I watch some, and of course the Super Bowl thing, there was all kinds of things, when he's at her concert, he's a supporting boyfriend, and when she's at the football game, she's a distraction. It's just that kind of scenario. But additionally, they played a reel on, Instagram, I think, that showed when Will Smith went on the stage and slapped, who did he slap? Chris Rock?
Chris
I don't
Rock.
remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, so and how that was like, well, he good for him standing up for his woman, and then it showed women who had acted out physically, and they were demonized. They were, I mean, just like people's minds exploded.
Right. How dare you be angry and react? Now, am I saying every reaction is appropriate and healthy? Absolutely not. But until we have hard discussions, and again, it kind of points to the weird discomfort around our event, is because people are uncomfortable confronting the complexity of violence in women and anger. You know what I
Right.
mean? And it's very true what you said. First of all, I want to say my thing was this: Will, your wife can speak up for herself. She doesn't, you are not somebody's daddy. Right? Like,
Right.
and that's why she looked very perturbed,
Mhm.
right? Because I didn't ask you to do that. Please don't do that. And so you get that reaction, and then you cut to Taylor not laughing at a joke that was made at her expense and just pursing her lips and taking a drink. Oh, she's mad, this bitch. Why is she always got a. My God, women really are damned if they do and damned if they don't. And so once you go from this constant pressure in the world, in society, with all this garbage, you end up in these cages, and that feeling, Marci, of you are bad. You as a little girl, 15 years old anyway, I still feel like I was a little girl in my head. You don't have a conscience. You don't have a soul. And then just to be told that over and over, and that's validated by the way that they treat us.
Yes.
And so we're dangerous because we speak up. We're dangerous when we speak out, when we resist. What, baby? And all we have to do is quietly resist, not say anything, not participate. We're still a problem. And it's like, it comes from this place of control, right? Like the patriarch society that we live in wants to control women's body, wants to control their decisions. We are objects. And it is
We're
only a
yeah,
thousand times worse when you get in those cages.
we're wombs. We're baby breeders. That's I mean, I just think that there's still a large amount of society that just thinks women are here for to support men in a supportive role.
Right.
And I'm just so I didn't grow up in that environment. I remember my mom coming home from corporate America saying things, "Well, it's because I have these bumps in my sweater." And I remember thinking, what is she talking about? Because I'm here with my dad, who is just I am a daddy's girl. I am a daddy's girl, but he is also genuinely wonderful and genuinely treats women and everyone he encounters with such respect. Um, and so I didn't see that from the men in my family or the men in my circle, right? And then I start, and it starts when they're young. Golly, I should have, and I might can find it quickly. There's a Instagram reel and it talks about statistically and it shows little girls saying it. I mean, it just shows by the time a little girl's 5, she doesn't think that she could ever be president. By the time she's 7, she doesn't think she could, I mean, doesn't think she could be a scientist. By the time she's 10, and that's because that's what her environment is telling her.
I love my father, but I'm going to tell everybody something he said to me when I was younger. And it's very hurtful now thinking about it. And my dad has been my biggest advocate, but he has been my internally as a woman, one of my biggest complications. Um, I asked him when I was younger, Daddy, why isn't there a girl president? And he told me that women are too emotional and they can't be in those positions because men are more logical and they don't get swept away with their emotions. And we can look at every world war that was ever started, which was started by men,
Yes.
and it's like I was told that, and I internalized that somehow. I never felt like I couldn't do stuff because then when I was on the basketball team and we were wearing clothes from 1970 while the boys team got brand new Nikes and new jerseys they got to keep every year and we're still wearing, my dad was like, What is this about? My daughter deserves the best too. And I'm like, well, Daddy, our teams are different than the boys' teams. And they told him, because nobody cares about this, we just have to have a girls' team because it's a part of the law. We'll get sued. So you have to have a girls' team. And I remember him being, golly, he was so angry. And it was like, are you making the connection though?
Toonch, nobody ever told me that about women in politics, like verbally that I remember. But I want you to know that by the time I was a young adult, I had that same thought. Like
Right.
society had taught me that no, that's why we're not in leadership roles. That's why we shouldn't be in leadership roles, you know. And then women like us end up in prison, come home from prison, and we're told in circles that are fighting for prison reform, even, that we're not welcome in that space, and sometimes by other women that have done time. It's such a unique, weird thing that we do to each other instead of collaborating and empowering one another and lifting one another up. And it's taken me, so I'm not judging, because in my 30s didn't think this way. You know, I don't know if it's just age, experience, the more that I'm kind of involved in social justice. I don't know. But uh, women supporting women, that's powerful. That
Yeah.
we can really get some shit taken care of in our communities, in our country. My daughter's on. Hi, Lauren. I love
Hi,
you.
Lauren.
And talk about women empowering women. You know, this girl right here, she's all about that. She's all about it. She supports all of her friends, all of her female friends, lift them up, empower them, and
Yeah.
not give in to this patriarchal idea that we're not enough, that we're each other's enemies.
That we can't trust each other,
We
right?
can't trust each other. We're competition.
Right. And Marcy, again, this has been hard shit for me to look at within myself because, like I said, my violence towards other humans have been women, close relationships. Where is this coming from? To be
KK
able
said,
to look
yeah.
to be able to, yes, to be jealous of other women, and me really having to and I can tell you, right? Like, this has been a lot of therapy and soul searching, and I don't mind being vulnerable here. Why is this rage and anger that I take out on other women happening? It's been happening my whole life. Well, first of all, I had to realize, well, I hate myself. I hate myself. I hate myself for all the ways that I was told I'm dirty, I'm shameful, my body's dirty, you're property, you're an object, your feelings don't matter, you're second class, you're here to serve, you're all of that, right? And then to also look and say, when those things were happening to me, Marcy, and I'm gonna keep it really raw. When those things were happening to me as a child and a young woman, and then in the system, to see that adult women failed me, that they didn't speak up, that they didn't help me when they knew I was being abused and they turned a blind eye. I remember asking my therapist, why? She said, Jennifer, that means that those women in your family had to look at the abuse that they suffered. And self preservation comes before everything else, honey, before
Mm.
child, before parent. And so, looking at this, when women fail me, when I don't feel heard or supported or valued by other women, it enrages me in a way that, and disappoints me in a way that when men do it, it doesn't. I mean, it still does, but not like this. And I thought, my God, like, no wonder I'm taking this out on other women. And how do I look at that? And how do I stop doing that? Right? It's better communication skills. It's being okay with my anger, right? It's okay to be angry. Don't hold it all in until you fucking tell
Explode.
somebody to cut their throat and die, or you explode and I end up in prison twice, right? It's the appropriate way to make peace with that female rage and anger, and look at the reasons why it's there, right? And kind of come out of that gaslighting and that trauma that has been in my life for 40 something years. And I'm not proud of it. I remember, and I'll say it, it was a ex-girlfriend, ex-dating, whatever. And I'm passionate about the social justice work we do. I will tell you this: the one place I did feel supported and loved by other women was formerly incarcerated women, right? Like through the years, that's where some healing happened. But I remember I was having it out with this person, pretty nasty, baby. Because and I've talked about this with Pam last week. The only thing I had to protect myself as a little girl and a woman was this thing right here, was my mouth. And you and I and our friends are masters at it, because words became weapons. That was the only way I had to defend myself. And so when these things were happening to me in this relationship, I didn't know what else to do but to do just that. And she disappointed me. She failed me. And sometimes that's real or imagined because I'm not well. And I ripped into her and I said things to her that people that know me and love me would be shocked. It was the epitome of the most horrendous, violent, terrible things that I could say to this person that I had just 2 weeks ago said I loved. And she told something to me that I have heard echoed from other people. And I think this is why it hurt when the other people said it. How can you work on social justice with the prison system and talk about all the stuff they did to abuse you and how you want to make that better for other women and you're pushing back and fighting this, but you turn into them when you get angry? How
Mm.
dare you? What a hypocrite. And it stung, Marcy. And when I've heard it several times after, I'm like, I need to stop and take a look at that.
It's a reality check.
Yes, ma'am, it was. And it self-reflection is hard, especially as women, because we're not taught to do it in a way that doesn't shame us.
Toonch, we have not very much long. Our show's almost over, guys, but I want to talk about the ways that how do we turn that around? How do we stop letting other people hold our story and tell us who we are? How do we start taking that on ourselves?
Well, I think it's what we're doing right now. It's what we do with each other, right? It's honesty, it's vulnerability, it's understanding your triggers, it's understanding what communication, clear, assertive communication looks like. It's going to therapy, right? It's undoing all of that. And I'm going to tell you something. People think transformative restorative justice and trauma informed care is this pretty pink blanket with bunnies and cupcakes and we're all going to live in a peaceful world. It's painful as fuck, because it requires a level of self-reflection that people absolutely will avoid. They hate it. It's painful. It's shameful. But I think once we continue to do that and be willing to do that with each other, because, even me and you, me and the women in our circle, we don't always get along and we don't always do the right thing by each other, but we're willing to keep trying and believing and supporting and learning from our mistakes and moving forward. And I think that's how you start to reclaim your story. The first part of that is you have to be honest about your story. And this is what I told somebody the other day. Well, we talk about what the system does to us, but can we be honest? Hey, guess what? I beat the fuck out of somebody. I killed somebody. I did this violent thing, right? We talk about holding the state accountable. We have to hold ourselves accountable. I am a villain sometimes, but I'm also a little girl healing. I'm also a friend and a sister and a Swiftie, right? Like I am more than just this role.
And you learn from your learning. That's the thing. We're not this we're living, we're changing and learning every day. It's not that okay, this person that and for me, right? Whatever. I got caught up taking a lot of money that didn't belong to me because I didn't think that I was enough with what I had, because I'm all of that, keeping up with the Joneses, greed, all of that. That was a part of me, but I have evolved. We are changing people. These folks, this child that got convicted of this crime, Toonch, when she was 15 years old, is not the person sitting on this show today. And how dare people continue to use that and tell us that that's who we are?
The
No, that's
whole
something that
world,
happened. That's
that's
something that
right. The whole world wants to tell women who they are. You get to tell people who you are. Your story
yes,
is yours. And we're not just in this box that somebody else has identified as us as. We are not our mistakes. We are not the labels put on us. We are an evolution, right? And if anybody's trying to tell your story for you, oh honey, mm-mm. It's immediate. What we call narrative advocacy is own your story, own all of it, and tell it the way you want to. Nobody else gets to tell it. They can try, but I think this is something that we do really well when we see the state prison system put a narrative out about what's happening in the prison with nice little graphics and graduations. And I'm not saying that stuff isn't happening, but that is not the story of the majority of incarcerated women in this state. You don't get to tell their story. We do. They
exactly. Exactly. Like when you show, God bless Sir Mr. Christopher Carter at the hobby unit, engaging with the women, giving them these powerful motivational words, when the week prior to that, that girls were writing us, telling us that they were using the bathroom in chip bags and throwing it out the window because their water had been off for days and nobody was flushing their toilets. And then but we're only telling just then days later, here's Christopher Carter. Welcome, sir. And that's what we're showing.
right.
Yeah, it's
And
that
and
same
guess
thing.
what? People like that, people like Mr. Carter, people in these spaces of authority and power, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt that he may not have even known Marcy. Just like we go up to legislators, they don't know. And then you tell them your story, and they're like, I had no idea. Well, boy, it kind of changes things now. And I said this on the panel. It's really hard to treat people like garbage when you see them as a whole person. This complicated, you know, I'm thinking about some of the characters that we'll all come dressed as our favorite villainous women or favorite villains, period. Well, are we glorifying violence? No, we're being honest about it, right? The same way that I've always said, people don't like somebody like Yolanda because they love Selena. Yolanda is more than a villain. Gypsy Rose is more than a villain. Maybe their behavior was villain like, but where was it coming from? That she's a whole person. And we are treated and held to different standards than men are, period. And so we reclaim our stories by being open, vulnerable, and accountable. But through the lens of empowerment for us. Other people don't get to tell us how to do that.
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
sorry, I get real cranked up because this is the heart of what's wrong, is that women aren't able to own their stories and their mistakes in the way that empowers them.
Yes. Yes, yes. And so that's what this event, this Women's History Month, it's more than just an event, I feel, for formerly incarcerated women in Texas. I feel it's a movement. And we are going to continue to try to empower our sisters to own their own narrative, to feel confident about who they are and who they want to be, and not get stuck on whomever they've been told that they are. And I'm excited. The event is March 30th at the Austin Cinemaker Space from 6 to 9 p.m. We have people from all over Texas coming, and it's going to be pretty impactful. It's going to be something that you haven't seen before, and you might feel a little uncomfortable at moments because you might have to think about some things, but it's also going to be beautiful, and it's a party.
It's a party. It's a celebration. It's some things to explore. And I think it points to this, Marci. Nobody gets to tell us how to do our advocacy. Nobody gets to tell us what the wrong and right way is to elevate our own stories
We
and
don't
to
have to
talk about
show
our own
up.
issues.
Yes, we don't have to show up in $200 pair of dress shoes and pantyhose or whatever. We don't have to. We can come authentic, we can come as ourselves. And for people that have done long term in prison, we might not be saying the right terms, the proper business terms when we're talking, but we're going to show up how we know, how we are, and we're going to talk about what we're passionate about, and nobody's going to slow us down.
That's right.
Toonch, any final thoughts? I almost hate to ask.
You get me cranked up. I've been reading this Dangerous Women essays on power and identity. And honey, stuff like this and this event and y'all, you and the people who support us validates our experiences to know that we're not crazy. We've been gaslit, we've been controlled, and other women feel this. It's real. And so I'm just excited about the unique way that we want to do things. And I'm proud of us.
I'm proud of us too, and I'm proud of you, Toonch. It is Wednesday night. We will be back here next week, same time, same place, Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. And Toonch, we have a special guest next week, and it is Marie with Life in Haiti. Marie did time with me on the Dr. Lane Murray unit, and she knew you as well.
Honey, she used to cut my hair at Mountain View.
Well, okay, so we were both locked up with her. I'm really excited. Now she got deported to Haiti and has made an incredible life for herself advocating for Haiti. And I'm really excited to have her. She's going to share some of her story. She's just now starting to open up a little bit about her incarceration story. So I'm sure she'll talk about that a little bit and talk a lot about her big moves that she's making now. Next week, same time, same place. Thank you guys for hitting the like, the share, commenting. We appreciate you all so much. If you're listening wherever you hear your favorite podcasters, please do leave us a review. Until next time, I'm Marci Marie.
Toonchi.
For hanging out with us on the Recyard Women's Prison Podcast with Marci Marie and Toonchi.